Crossroads, so this is my first time to get to speak to a mostly empty room and to talk to all of you through the screen, but I think I can do it. I do have a few moments where I need laughter, so maybe the sound team can give me some canned laughter or something in the background, and the few friends in the room, maybe they'll laugh with me when I get to those moments. So anyway, I'm so thankful to be here with you. We have started a new series last week called Warrior. And this might be my favorite so far since I came to Crossroads. And then to look at the world around us right now, especially this week in our country, I just can't think of a better topic than digging into this idea of what in the world does it look like to be a man or woman warrior of God? Does it look like what we're seeing in the world around us? Or is it something totally different? And so we are taking these few weeks to kind of dissect this idea and to pull out some specific thoughts that we could take and carry with us into this new year to make us into the warriors that God has called us to be. Now, last week, Pastor Adam did an awesome job of introducing us to the topic, and he told us that a warrior doesn't look the other way. A warrior doesn't look the other way. When a problem comes, a warrior of God faces it head on, whether you're a man or a woman. Now, for every characteristic of a warrior, there's a temptation to do the opposite. So, good versus evil, right versus wrong. When we look at every characteristic of a warrior, there's a temptation to do the opposite. And the opposite of not looking the other way would be, I'm just going to look the other way because it's easier. One of the areas that I think it's easy, that it's tempting to look the other way, to choose a different path, is when it comes to God's best for our lives. I think it can be easier sometimes to give in to the temptation to just settle. Just settle, because what's in front of me makes more sense. It's more realistic. Thank you, Nate. You might not can see, but Nate just brought me a cup of water. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. I said, get me a cup of water in case I start coughing. Now, as we get into the topic of settling, I want to make some things clear up front. There's a few areas in my life that I absolutely will not settle. One of those is that I will never settle for regular M&Ms when I can have a peanut M&M. The people in the room just said, preach it. So you can respond in the comments if that is something that you agree with. It's okay if you want to refute me in the comments and say, no, Shannon, it's all about plain old M&Ms. I mean, that's your prerogative. You don't have to settle. Another thing that I will never settle for is weird flavored Oreos. Just give me a plain, old-fashioned, dunkable Oreo. Now, some of you are in the comments already like, I need the ones with red in the middle. I need the ones with green in the middle. I need the ones with pumpkin. And I am a pumpkin person, but do not give me a pumpkin Oreo. I will not settle for that. Okay? So those are some areas that I absolutely will not settle. And then there are some areas that I will gladly settle, like when it's snowy and cold, I might settle for just not going to the gym because it could be treacherous to my health. They're telling me in the room again, they're like, preach. So we're all on the same page in this room. If you're not on the same page with us at home, well, I don't know. I'll settle sometimes, and I'll just be like, eh. My husband doesn't settle in that regard. My husband, Alan, he goes to the gym. Rain, sun, snow. I'm not that person. I'll settle. And then there's one other area that I will settle. On my very first date with my wonderful husband, he looked across the table into my eyes, and he said, do you want to share fajitas? And we've been sharing a meal at restaurants ever since. And so over the 17 years of marriage, I've just gotten to the place where I just will settle. I'll say, sure, we can share whatever you want to eat. Usually it's fajitas, but sometimes it ventures outside of that. So I'll settle for sharing a meal with my husband, and I'll do that gladly. Now, all of these areas I've mentioned obviously aren't areas that are going to deeply affect my warrior status. Although going to the gym, anyway, whatever. But they're really not going to affect my warrior status. But I can tell you that there have been some key moments in my journey that I have had to choose whether or not I'd settle for what made sense in the current moment, or I had to choose whether or not I would settle for what I knew of from my past or what Jesus was offering me for the future. I've had to come face to face with my own insecurities, the pain of an abusive childhood, the lies I believed because of that childhood, and I've had to choose if I was going to make a different life, let God do something different than what I thought was expected. Really, I had to choose if I was going to let Jesus set my soul free. And so today, I'm up here because I want to speak specifically to all the ladies. Whether you're little ladies or older ladies. I hate saying older, but you know what I mean by that. All the ladies in the room, that room. Because I know how easy it is to settle for second best. To believe that the role you're in this exact moment, that's all there is. That I need to just be happy with this and nothing else. That I've been told this is it. I know that struggle. See, I think that there's a very desperate reach in culture to separate our value and identity from Jesus. I don't think that's a secret to any of us, whether you're a man or a woman. And it's caused chaos, and it's caused confusion, and it's caused us all to go, but wait, who am I? What am I? It's no secret, I'm not going to pretend, it's no secret, ladies, that for women throughout the generations, it's been a struggle. It took a long time for women to get the right to vote. It took a long time for women to get the right to go to work. It took a long time for women to be able to go to college. So all of those things are real. And our culture, in an effort to fix that, came up with a movement that was really rooted in bitterness and anger. And you're a woman. Take your place. Go out. Make your mark. If a man can do it, you can do it too. All of this has just left, I believe, women confused, empty. But wait, what, who am I? None of this is fitting, and it's not making sense, and I don't understand, and the rules keep changing out there, so who am I? I've got good news. God's not confused. He's not confused about who we are as women. And he is not confused about what he designed us for. But the reality is that sometimes, most times, probably all the time, what he's calling us to, it feels really hard, even impossible. And so often we respond with, I'll let someone else do that. I'll just stay in my comfortable place because this is what I know. This is more realistic. This is what's expected. I mean, after all, I'm a mom and a wife. I get it. We have our to-do lists. We have our hats that we wear. We have lots going on. And so we don't see the point in trying to change things or pursuing something that might be harder or might be more impossible. Even when what God's asking us to pursue is a healing journey for our past. Even that, sometimes we'll settle and say, I don't want to go there. It's too hard. And then on the other hand, because of this confusion over our identity, we are often led to do what Eve did, which is to just settle for sin. To look at the fruit and go, well, maybe I need to do that because maybe that will make me worthy, or maybe I need to know more, so I need to do that. Just like Eve confused about our identity, and so we take the fruit and we eat. The bottom line is this, friends, that women have been tempted, as well as men, from the beginning to settle for second best, or what wasn't even best. Now, Jesus had a lot to say to women. In fact, I get really excited when I start talking about the way that Jesus encountered women. And I've studied it and I've pored over the stories in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, that talk about Jesus and his time on this earth and the way he spoke to women, the way he responded, the way he treated them. It gets me excited because I never see Jesus do anything except empower women to use their voice. And so I want to look at a story today of Jesus and a couple girls. I'm calling it The Tale of Two Sisters. It's a very dramatic title for it. It's the story of Martha and Mary, and I think many of us know this story. Some of you might not, and that's okay. I know that I've heard this story my whole life. I've heard the phrase, "Don't be Martha, be Mary." I've heard that my whole life. So there's always been a connotation or a kind of a slant towards seeing this story one way. And there's a few things I want to point out before we read the story because they matter for context, for what's actually happening in the moment of this story in the Gospel of Luke. You need to understand that Mary and Martha are considered dear friends of Jesus and disciples. So they are counted as disciples of Jesus. They are out doing the good work of Jesus, just like the 12 who follow him. The story is set of these two sisters who both love Jesus. They love Jesus. But they have different ideas about exactly what it means to pursue and follow and love Jesus. And so with that in mind, let's read together Luke 10, starting in verse 38. It says, "As Jesus and the disciples continued on their journey, they came to a village where a woman welcomed Jesus into her home. Her name was Martha, and she had a sister named Mary. Mary sat down attentively before the master, absorbing every revelation he shared. But Martha became exasperated, finishing the numerous chores in preparation for her guests. So she interrupted Jesus and said, 'Lord, don't you think it's unfair that my sister left me to do all the work? You should tell her to get up and help me.' The Lord answered her, 'Martha, my beloved Martha, why are you so upset and troubled, pulled away by all of these many distractions? Are they really that important? Mary has discovered the one thing most important by choosing to sit at my feet. She's undistracted, and I won't take that privilege from her.'" Now, there's a few really jaw-dropping things you need to know about this passage. First of all, to describe Mary as one who sits at Jesus' feet is revolutionary because the only ones who sat at Jesus' feet were students of a rabbi. When the rabbi would teach, all of his students would gather and they would sit at his feet. And so that would make you a student being trained up in the Torah, which was the law of God. So to call a woman one who sits at Jesus' feet is revolutionary. And this is a phrase that would be used when someone was literally sitting at the feet of a rabbi, but it also could be used to reference someone who did sit at Jesus' feet or the feet of a rabbi. Women were not allowed in this day and age to sit at a rabbi's feet and learn. Women weren't allowed to be educated. It was considered unimportant, not by God's standard, but by man's standard. It was considered unnecessary. But here's what you need to understand, that Jesus never settles for the status quo. Jesus never walks into a situation and goes, "Oh, that's how it's been done. Well, then let's keep the status quo." He welcomes women to sit at his feet, to be disciples. They traveled with him. They shared this good news of his gospel just like the guys did. He never held them back. He empowered them to know him and to know his voice and then to use their voice. What we're really wrestling here in this story, really, is Martha's view of herself. Martha did what any sister might do. She tattletaled. Any sisters in the house? I've got 2 daughters. Hi, Lindsay and Lacey. They are not bad at tattletelling when necessary, right? Sisters do that, brothers and sisters. Tattletelling. And so that's what Martha does in her frustration. Jesus, Mary needs to help me. I'm here doing all this work. She's not doing nothing. Tell her to help. I think that Martha earnestly believes in this moment that what she's doing is far more important. It's the necessary work. This is what we're supposed to do, so come and help me. That's not our calling. This is our calling. Maybe Martha hasn't fully grasped the reality of what Jesus offers women. Maybe she's understanding it in one context. I'm a minister to the Lord in this context of the practical, day-to-day, the things that have got to get done. But maybe she still is having a hard time wrapping her brain around her sister sitting at the feet of Jesus, sharing the good news out in the streets. Now, Jesus is gracious in his response. And I think sometimes this has been painted as Jesus going, Martha. But that's not what we see. If you take the many translations and you cross-examine them and you really dig in, Jesus is very gracious in his response. He never condemns the work that Martha's doing. He never says, the practical day-to-day stuff's not as important. He never says that to her. What he does say is that Martha is periaspato. The word periaspato means pulled or dragged in different directions. Listen, y'all, Martha is tired. Martha is exhausted. Martha is frustrated. And in all of her periaspato, she goes to Jesus and vents. I don't know about you, but I know that when I'm overwhelmed, when I feel pulled in a million directions, that is when I find myself settling for second best. When I don't understand, like Martha, when I don't quite grasp, I get Jesus loves me, I get who he is, I get that I can minister and serve and be a part of his good work, but I still kind of see it as this one thing. I'm like, but this is the one thing that I'm allowed to do. When I don't understand my true identity in Jesus, I settle for second best. See, Martha's not wrong in her ministry to Jesus. She's not wrong. But Jesus wants her to understand that Mary's not wrong either. Mary's not wrong in her choice to pause and to sit at Jesus' feet. Mary's not wrong in her choice to be out spreading the gospel, but not necessarily always at home making the pies. But listen, we need someone to make the pies, right? We need someone to take care of the neighbor who's sick and needs a meal. We need someone to be the hands and feet in the village, in the community. And Jesus is saying, Martha, you be Martha. Don't let all of the distractions of all of this pull you away from who you are. Be who you are, and let Mary be who she is. She's chosen a good thing to sit with me, to learn from me, to grow in this way. Maybe Martha is like me, and she spent a lot of years living in the box provided for her by society. And so maybe she's just really struggling to see life outside of it, even in the presence of Jesus. This story has never been about Mary being better than Martha. It's really just a story about how easily we will settle for what seems right in our own eyes and what makes the most sense to us, and then how we'll even demand that of others, rather than choosing to be disciples of Jesus, to pause in his presence, to sit at his feet, to learn from him, to figure out what he's calling us to be and to pursue it without worry or fear of what anyone else is doing or what anyone else thinks. What I think that Jesus wants us to understand through this story of his good friends and disciples, Mary and Martha, is that we all have access to him. We aren't expected to settle for less than all of him, and we don't have to feel pulled and dragged in 100 different directions. Forget the perispato. Sit at Jesus' feet when that's what you need to do. It's okay to sit at his feet. You have been given permission to sit at his feet. And when you're doing that practical, day-to-day hard work, don't be pulled and overwhelmed by it, but remember that if that's what God's calling you to, then that's what you do. And you do it with gladness, and you do it out of a love for who Jesus is. Now, all of this kind of makes more sense. This whole concept of women and different roles, and we can do different things and still love Jesus, it all makes more sense when we revisit the story of Eve. Genesis 2:18 says, "Then the Lord God said, 'It is not good for the man to be alone, so I will make a helper who is just right for him.'" Now, most translations use the word helper here to describe women. But the original language used a way more powerful and colorful word than just helper. The word is Eitzer. Now, I want to give you a little quick word study on this word, just to give you a glimpse of just how colorful and powerful this word is. This word, it's used 3 times in the entire Bible to describe people in a military sense going in to either help or choosing not to go in and help. And it is used 16 times only, 16 times, to reference God as the helper who comes in to rescue and save with his mighty hand. And 2 times it is used to describe woman. See, Eitzer describes aspects of God's character. He is our strength, our rescuer, our protector, our helper. And Eitzer is the word that God uses to describe the first woman. Eve was not just a helper. Eve was someone who would give vital strength. She would be an equal strength to Adam. This is important, sisters, because if you think you're just anything, then you will settle for just being anything. But you're not just created as helper. You're not just created as second. You're not less. You are God's best solution to the first problem, which is, it's not good for man to be alone. I need a solution. I know what I'll do. I'll create woman. And he created woman, and he stood back, and he said, she is good. And so did Adam. You are vital strength in a million different ways. The way that you live out that strength, it's not the same as the sister next to you. But you're vital. You're an Eitzer. And when I try to think of a good visual of what God might have been seeing in his mind when he created Eve, well, I think that this moment probably shows us the best. Take a look.
Nooit eens hebben aanstaan ooit moeten diegenen die niet konden ontsnappen, die worden als slaven meegenomen.
Wat is het gebeurd?
Werd aan die andere kant van die loegang.
Dinah, we have to go.
We need to help these people.
We have to stay on mission.
The next safe crossing is at least a day away.
What are we waiting
We
for?
cannot leave without helping them. These people are dying. They've nothing to eat, and in the village enslaved, she said.
I understand that.
Women,
we need to make our next
children.
position by
How
sunset.
can you say that? What is the matter with you?
This is no man's land, Diana. It means no man can cross it, all right? This battalion has been here for nearly a year, and they barely gained an inch. All right, because on the other side, there are a bunch of Germans pointing machine guns at every square inch of this place. This is not something you can cross. It's not possible.
So what? So we do nothing?
No, we are doing something. We are. We can't save everyone in this war. This is not what we came here to do.
No. But it's what I'm going to do.
Diana!
You might not have a costume like Diana. You may not have a shield you can whip out when things get hard. But sister, that is what God sees when he looks at you. That is what he had in mind when he created you. He did not create you to be a second best. He created you as an Eitzer. And just like Diana, when you're told you can't, you shouldn't, it's too hard, it's no man's land, don't try. God says you are vital strength. You are there to help rescue and to help protect and to help aid. If you don't believe that you are an Eitzer, you will always settle for less than God's best. Warriors settle in their minds that they will never settle for less than God's best. Warriors settle in their minds to never settle for less than God's best. Diana saw the circumstances, but she saw the women and the children who needed to be rescued, and she said, we must try, we must cross over, because she understood that a warrior doesn't settle for what they're told is impossible. They pick up their armor and they fight. This is a very personal message for me, because I have spent the last few years in this exact place of understanding my identity as an Eitzer. I am Alan's Eitzer as his wife. I am Lindsay and Lacey's Eitzer as their mom. I am an Eitzer to my neighbor when they need a meal. I am Eitzer to the man or woman I give a backpack to on the street because they don't have anything else. And I am God's Eitzer to you today, standing here speaking his truth. It has been, and it still is, a journey of believing that I'm more than I once thought. I've had to break out of the box that was created for me by a lot of different voices telling me this is how you will be. This is who you should be. I had no idea when I began a journey, it's been 12 now years, of healing, when I made the choice and I had to choose to walk into the counselor's office and sit down and start a journey of healing from childhood trauma. I had no idea the journey ahead of me. That was the one choice I was making in that moment that was me choosing not to settle. I was saying, all right, I'm not happy. I'm not content. There's wounding inside of me that needs healing. I'm not going to settle for less than God's best. I'm going to take the step. And let me tell you, it felt like Diana crossing no man's land when I took those steps into that counseling office. It felt like a battle. But I did it, and I kept doing it, and I kept doing it. And then as I was healing, and as I was understanding and uncovering who Jesus really is, and as I was realizing that I was allowed to sit at his feet, he started whispering ideas into my mind of what I could be. And it was hard at first because I go, whoa, I can't do that. That's not for me. He called me to do this. I had no idea he was going to call me to do this. I was content to just let my husband do it, and I was going to sit on the sidelines. And God said, no, that's not what I've created you for. And so he started calling me into this, to leading in the church. I didn't see that I had the freedom to be a leader in the church, but my husband spoke it into me. And if you know Pastor Rob, you know that he speaks it into every woman around him. That you can be a leader. You can be what God's called you to be. You don't have to settle. And so I've been on a personal journey of embracing my identity as an Eitzer. I went through the season of worry that I was breaking God's rules, or I'm in this box and this is the box God created for me, and what if I step out of the box and it's wrong? And I had those worries, and I poured over scriptures, and I was praying, and I was trying to find, and then one day Jesus just whispered, and I know his voice. He said simply, "Are you quite ready to do what I designed you to do?" And I said, okay, if you say so. And so I've been on a journey with him. And I know how hard it is to step into our true identity in Jesus. See, I didn't pursue roles and titles. Those weren't the things I was pursuing. I was pursuing Jesus. And in pursuing Jesus, he revealed who I really am. But I know how hard it is. I know that there are 1,000 voices that want to steal your identity, sister. I know. And I know that fear can be overwhelming. Fear can be overwhelming, telling us that we couldn't, that we shouldn't, that it's impossible, that it's impractical. But I've learned something as someone who has fought with fear and had to deal with the most paralyzing kind of fear. I can tell you what I've learned, that the only way to fight fear is to face it head on, to call it out, to look it in the face and say the name of the fear and to cast it out and say, nope, I'm choosing, even though you're there trying to stop me, I choose to cross no man's land. I choose to put on my armor, to pick up my sword, and to be what Jesus is calling me to be. And so I'm going to ask you to do something. Maybe you've got a piece of paper and pen nearby. If not, maybe pull out your phone. And this is for everybody, because even though I've been speaking specifically to women, I think that we all know it's a human struggle settling. It is a human struggle to settle for less than God's best. Sometimes it's sin that we settle for, and sometimes it's just that it looks too hard, so we settle for what makes more sense to us, what's easier. But I know that we all struggle with fear, and so what I want you to do is I want you to take a moment, and I'm going to stand here and pause and let you do that, and I want you to name that fear by writing it down. What is it that you're afraid of? Why do you not want to step into what Jesus is whispering? Maybe you need to step into a journey of healing from your past. What's holding you back? Maybe God's calling you as a woman to be something that you never dreamed you could be. Why are you not wanting to do it? What's that fear telling you? Is it telling you that you're not qualified? Is it telling you that you can't do something different because too much pressure is on you to do what you're doing today? Take a minute and write it down. What is the fear that's holding you back from being all that Jesus has called you to be? I believe that Jesus is calling to us from Mary and Martha's living room. And I think he's saying, I've called you. You're my Eitzer. Come sit at my feet. Go do the work that you're called to do and do it with joy and gladness. Don't be pulled and distracted in many different directions. Be focused on who I've called you to be and be that woman. And I just wonder, what would our culture look like if the women of Jesus were to rise up in humble strength and become the Eitzers that God has called us to be? What would happen in our culture if women were to stand up and in humility say, I've come to offer aid. I've come to offer help to rescue. I've come to offer help to protect. Men, I have a challenge for you. What would happen if you made a commitment to speak the same words over the women in your life that Jesus speaks over women? What if you spoke to women the way Jesus spoke to women? What if you tell them they are worthy, they are valuable, they are necessary? I want to challenge you to do that very thing. I am here because of the good work of Jesus, and my husband has spoken those good words into me. He lets Jesus speak through him to me. And so I am a whole, healed, preaching chick because my husband has said, you're not just here to be my helper. You're here to be a help. Go. Be strength to those who need it. And I want to challenge you men to do that very thing. And so here's how I'm going to close. This is an interactive Sunday. You thought you were going to just sit in your pajamas and do nothing, but you were wrong. I'm going to ask that if you are in the room with women of any age, little ones, tall ones, all of them, I'm going to ask that you right now get into a position of prayer where you can put arms around those girls in your life. Husbands, if you're in the room with your wife, then I'm going to ask you to put your hands on her, to lay your hands on her, to pray over her. If you're by yourself, we have a phone number that's coming up on the screen, and you can call in, and we have pastors that are ready to pray with you. So no one should go without prayer. No women that need it should go without prayer. If you're in the room with some girlfriends and you want to just pray over each other, go for it. But I'm going to pray to close out this Sunday. I'm going to pray over the women, but I want to hear your voices through the screen. I want to hear you pray. You pray over the women in your life, and you speak the value and the identity into them that Jesus speaks into them, that they are free to sit at his feet, that they are Eitzers called to be vital strength, and that he will show them, he will reveal in their hearts what he's calling them to. And just like Martha and Mary, to know it's going to be different for everybody. It's not a cookie cutter. It's you choosing to pursue Jesus and let him reveal to you who you are. All right, are you ready? We're going to pray. Jesus, you are the strength in our bones. You are the fire inside of us. And you've given men and women, you've given us the same power, the same authority to pursue the impossible, to dream big dreams, to go out into the world and share the good news of your message. And the world needs the good news of your message. And you are saying in 2021, ladies, it is time. Stand and take your place. Get your armor ready. I have not called you to the sidelines. I have called you to be vital strength, to come and to help rescue, to help protect, to help aid. You are not just a helper. So Jesus, I speak that over every woman within the sound of my voice, that they today will feel the stirring of your presence. That if they are feeling like Martha, pulled in many directions, that they would remember and become centered again in you. That if the work they're doing is no longer full of joy because they've forgotten their identity, that you would speak and breathe identity into them right now, Jesus. That they would remember today that they are daughters of the King and they are warriors. And for those who are being stirred, maybe like I was, to do something that sounds so outlandish, that Jesus, they would cling so tightly to you and your voice, and that they would be willing to take scary steps and to cross no man's land if that's what you're asking them to do. And for the men that are listening, Jesus, fill them with the power and the humility to speak these things over the women in their lives. And even the women that aren't in their lives, but the women that they might encounter, to treat them as the vital strength that they are, to speak value into them, to empower them to use their voice. I thank you for making me a woman, Jesus. I thank you for the identity you gave me. You created me and you stood back and you said, it is good. And that is what you're saying about every woman within the sound of my voice. And so, Jesus, as we go forth into this year, we have no idea what it holds. But we know that you are constant, you are steady, that we can put our eyes on you, and that whatever you call us to do this year, we can do it through the power of your Spirit. So fill us up, Jesus, and overflow out of us. In Jesus' name, I pray all of these things. Amen.